Namaste. My name is Preity Upala, and I am a global thought leader and a multimedia personality. Welcome to my podcast, The Preity Experience. Join me as I explore some of the most fascinating and crucial issues that affect our world today. I take a unique global perspective on these issues, and the very foundation of my insights is humanity and spirituality. I'm Preity Upala, and welcome to the Preity Experience.
US President Donald Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., in a full frontal attack on Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, said that he is not good for India, as he could be soft on China since he has sold himself to Xi Jinping. 42-year-old Donald Trump Jr. is leading the re-election campaign for his 74-year-old father. The presidential elections in the US are slated to be held on the 3rd of November. In his tell-all book, Liberal Privilege, Trump Jr. accused Hunter Biden of taking $1.5 billion US from the Chinese. So I guess all gloves are off now. Just a couple of weeks left for the elections. And it's Donald Trump Jr. who's been running his mouth against Joe Biden of the Democratic Party very recently. Let's talk about this. Joining me on the panel is Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vora, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Garden, also joins us on the platform. Preity Upala, Editor of The Observer. She joins us from California. Professor Nalapat, you on more than one occasion have always spoken about how the Obama administration was perhaps responsible for the way China yields its weight around the world commercially and economically. Is it necessary that somebody who represents that party, well, he represents Obama to an extent as well because he was the vice president then, will also continue to cuddle up with China despite what has happened in the last 6 or 7 months?
Well, actually, the problem in the Democratic Party is the Clintons. Bill Clinton, as president, did a great deal to empower China, including in commerce, geopolitics, intelligence sharing, etc. During the Clinton administration, the store was open for China to take whatever technologies it wanted, while it was firmly blocked so far as India was concerned. Frankly, it made no sense to so many of us at that time. And Obama, if I may say so, the first term of Obama, yes, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and I have written about it, that basically it was a Clinton-light administration. You know, like Light Coke or Pepsi Light. You had a Clinton-light administration. And Obama came into the picture in his second term when Hillary Clinton decided to call the state. Now, during that time, it must be said, he did a lot, frankly, to improve relations with India. And that's been very vigorously brought forward by Donald Trump. So far as Hunter Biden is concerned, if it's true that $1.5 billion has been paid by entities linked to China to him, that's a very serious matter. And what needs to be studied is whether that money continued to be paid even after Trump became the US president in 2017, or stopped with the Trump swearing in. If it stopped or significantly slowed down with the Trump swearing in, that's a very serious matter indeed, because $1.5 billion is serious money. You know, I presume it's 1.5 billion and not 1.5 million. I mean, the city where Ambassador Vora is in now, New York, 1.5 million is regarded as small change.
Right, and I'm very sure Ambassador Vora is pretty much accustomed to this small change as well. Ambassador Vora, what do you make of this allegation which has been made by Donald Trump Jr.? Obviously, for some of us folks, who don't live in that country, it perhaps could also be seen as the usual rhetoric before any election. But the fact of the matter is that the Trump administration and the Clintons before them have been close to the Chinese, and all of that cannot be brushed under the carpet. That is not going to be water under the bridge if Joe Biden returns as the president. I beg your pardon, as the president, he was the vice president earlier. Do you think that is perhaps something that should concern India at this point in time?
Thank you very much for this opportunity once again to be with you, to learn from you and from the other panelists, and to reach out to the millions of people who watch your outstanding news channel. Yes, I am in New York, and today it's a little bit warmer, so I'm not trussed up. I'm wearing a casual shirt. You know, there are a couple of things here, sir. You've raised very vital issues. The most important thing about Joe Biden, the son, the junior, I beg your pardon, junior Donald Trump, releasing the book at a function in Long Island, which is part of New York State, yesterday, at a meeting of the Indian American community. It speaks volumes. We constitute a mere 1.5% of the American population, but our impact on American politics can be disproportionate. We are the wealthiest and most educated of all immigrant groups in the United States. And 2 million Indian Americans are eligible to vote, of whom 500,000, sir, 500,000, 500,000, live in battleground states. Now, the American electoral system has its idiosyncrasies, because we have this electoral college of 538 people, which means 100 representing the 100 senators and 438 the House of Representatives. So 270 is what you need to win. Theoretically, let's assume Mr. A is contesting. He wins the 20 largest states, forgets about the other 30. Mr. A could still be the president of the United States. So a state where Ms. Upala is, for example, like California, has always voted Democratic, and no one's going to pay too much attention to it from the Republican side. But it's the swing states, sir, where the Indian community is going to have the largest impact, and these are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin. And there just a few votes could make the difference. It's the winner take all. Therefore, sir, what my assessment at this point of time is that the serious allegation of financial impropriety that has been made against Junior Biden by Junior Trump, so it's one junior attacking another junior. The thing is, this could have a very serious impact, because the Indian community that lives here, forget about a few high-profile cases, by and large cherish American values of integrity, of honesty, of openness. And Trump has always talked of America first. By implication, what the junior Biden has done is America second and China first. That's going to hurt him very badly, sir. It's going to hurt Vice President Biden very, very badly.
All right, Preity Upala also joins us from Los Angeles. Preity, you are there. You've been observing the politics and the back and forth going on between the Democrats and the Republicans. According to a latest report, Donald Trump is trailing by 6 to 7 points. And a lot of female voters have slipped out of Donald Trump's purview. They don't want to vote for him. His handling of the COVID-19 situation, perhaps some of his, unruly behaviors on a couple of chat shows is something which also the Americans showed dissent towards. Do you think all of these agendas and all of these attacks that are being levied against Biden and his son at this point in time, just a fortnight away from the elections, will cut any ice with the American voter, especially the Indian voter?
Well, thank you, Mr. Malhotra, for having me on your show. Always a pleasure to be here. I've always said this, I wouldn't take the polls that seriously, because we all know what happened in 2016. Listen, the silent majority in America is quite large, and polls overwhelmingly hold Democrats, and the responses that they get are usually by Democrats. So they're not actually voting a valid representation of the American society when they conduct these polls. That's a very important thing to remember. I think if the Trump campaign will keep at it in terms of foreign policy, being the power that's going to overtake China, as well as really keep pushing and putting the pressure on Biden Jr. and all of these allegations that have come out, they really are going to find themselves on the front foot, so to speak. I mean, now all this whole New York Post being censored in carrying this story about Biden Jr. Is amounting to a political being politically correct, but not showing the facts to the public. It's political censorship, and that's not okay in a democracy, and certainly social media outlets should not be taking part in that. There is possibly a legal case here, I think, that the Trump campaign wants to even embark on. I don't think these things will make a big difference. As far as the Indian American community is concerned, forget about New York and California, but Indians are very, they live in some of these battleground states. And technically speaking, President Trump only needs to maybe win 3 of these battleground states, maybe Georgia, Atlanta, and Arizona, to get over the line, considering everything else being equal. So I think if they're smart, they'll focus on that. And I get a sense that the Indian American community in these other battleground states are moving center, moving right, because they feel that, number one, the GOP is viscerally and ideologically opposed to China, which is a big plus for India. And also the Trump administration has kept out of India's internal politics. And finally, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump obviously share this incredible chemistry, which is a huge plus for us moving forward. So I think those key Indian American voters have made up their mind, and they could be the very thing. They could hold the Trump card, so to speak. So let's see what happens.
Donald Trump Jr. has said that Joe Biden and his son are perhaps, close to China. And if Joe Biden, the former vice president of the United States, becomes the president and leads the Democratic Party to victory, then that could be bad for India. Professor Nalapat, but historically and characteristically as well, the Indian diaspora in the United States have always tilted towards the Democrats so far. And now with Kamala Harris as Joe Biden's running mate, there is perhaps a chance that, that vote share could perhaps even go further this time. Do you have any doubts about that, or do you think there are other factors that will be playing on the Indian diaspora's mind?
Well, I'd like to say that the Democrats have been very skillful at ensuring that the primary focus of the election has remained the coronavirus epidemic and not China, because they know that China is extremely unpopular with US voters, and that if any candidate who's seen as being soft on China will definitely have a problem in the polls. I think the Trump campaign has woken up to that, and they are talking to Indians about it, and certainly the Indian community has no love lost for China. There's no question about that. But I'd only like to say that there are other issues. And I think Donald Trump's problem is that his own party and some of its zealots may be his own worst enemies. For example, he's now appointed a judge, Amy Coney Barrett, who is against abortion of any kind, Roe v. Wade. The judge is basically against health care. She's very clear about that. Health care should be left to individual states. Well, then the Republican-ruled states will have very little care and very little health, frankly, because they've been cutting back on social services very extensively. Essentially, for them, a citizen of the United States must have at least about $100,000 a month, a year. And if you're don't get $100,000, well, you're not really worthy of being a citizen. That's a fact. So this particular choice will go down very, very badly. The reality is Americans care about their health care. The women of America care about freedom. And the Trump picks to the judiciary are basically people who are in the 1950s. So in my view, despite Biden and despite Hunter Biden, the Democrats have the advantage, mainly because of the self-goals of the Republicans.
The self-goals of the Republican. And Ambassador Vora, Donald Trump is in fact in court. He wants to get rid of Obamacare, and that has also been a point of concern, especially with the minorities, the African Americans and the Mexicans. But at the same time, do you think that the Democrats to some extent have been successful in isolating the faults or the mistakes of Donald Trump, predominantly which concern around COVID-19, to an extent that the voter has not been able to see the achievement per se that perhaps have been made in the last 4 years, especially the economy and the stock market doing so well since Donald Trump took over?
You're absolutely right, Mr. Malhotra, and Professor Nalapat put it so eloquently, as did Ms. Upala, about scoring self-goals and so on. The important thing here for the Indian community, sir, despite Kamala Harris, it's a high-earning, educated immigrant group, makes them very attractive pool of potential donors for political campaigns. They have emerged in this election as very significant donors. So Trump has been very smart, highlighting his rapport with Narendra Bhai Modi. Many South Asians who came to this country, sir, following the Immigration Naturalization Act of 1965, have not cut their ties with the mother country. And their children who are born here have an emotional attachment. So if they are seen, if one candidate is seen as being very friendly to India, there is a natural tendency to veer towards him. Although for Barack Obama, 4 out of 5 Indians, according to the surveys reports that I've seen, had voted for Barack Obama during his election. But now I believe that the pendulum is swinging to the other side. People are just feeling very comfortable in terms of the approach to India of Donald Trump. And it's now 10:20 in the morning here in New York. I've just come back from my morning walk with my group, which includes a multi-ethnic bunch of people. And one Indian professor who's been here for 30 years told me that we've never felt so wanted. Everybody is quoting us. They are putting out advertisements targeting us. Therefore, sir, the Democrats have been focusing on the weaknesses of Donald Trump. They have not talked about the plus points of their own system apart from the healthcare. There are many other issues that are involved. They haven't talked about foreign policy at all. And Trump has been highlighting that he has stood up to China. Coronavirus, he's trying to underplay it because it was mishandled, some people would say. But he is talking really about standing up to China and being seen as a guy who puts America first. He is the gladiator. He is the terminator. He's going to terminate all the nonsense that is coming out of China. That's the tough guy image he's projecting. Sir, it's going down very well. Please, as Ms. Upala said, don't trust these national polls. Because when push comes to shove, people want America to be where it was and still is, the greatest country in the world.
Absolutely. And Preity, he's also expressed reservations with mail-in voting. Donald Trump has gone on to say that that could be a fraudulent way for the Democratic Party to steal away the elections. But people have been voting. The army, troops stationed abroad in Afghanistan and Syria, they have been sending in their their ballots through mail. So that's another flashpoint, which has not really got too much of a sympathy for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the mail-in ballot situation. That's going to be another Pandora's box in the making. I think the Trump campaign has within its purview to make that another point, because one could deem it as being illegal if these are uncertified ballots, and I think there's already a push towards confiscating them and making them invalid. And quite frankly, my state of California, has been one of the greatest perpetrators of all of these sort of underhanded ways to get as many votes, which is, I think, a bit ironic because it's such a blue state anyway, so they don't really have to go all out to do anything special. They're going to get that vote. I think the Electoral College, it's funny, it's given advantage to either party, depending on the year. I think this year, the Trump campaign has the advantage, considering the battleground states and so on, and you don't have to just focus on the big states of California and New York, because they don't speak for the rest of the country. I think Don Jr. made a great point when he spoke to the Indian American community that, number one, he understands the Indian American community. He said that they are, they care about education, family values, and he appreciates their contribution to this great country of America. And also, he said that China poses the greatest threat to India. Indian Americans of all people know how dangerous a rising China is. And also, he made a point that his father got his greatest reception in India. So all of this is not lost on the Indian American community. I think the Democratic campaign, again, yes, they're focusing on the lack or everything that the Trump campaign might not have done, but we have not heard their policies on any other important issues, including Corona or China or foreign policy. Regarding the Afghan war, that's another, gray area where we don't know which way Biden will, where his mind is at, because they haven't touched these topics. And the Afghan peace process, so to speak, is of great concern to us, considering if the US pulls out completely, that void will manifest in an outpour of terrorism coming into Kashmir and India. So that becomes very, very important. And I'm actually surprised that the Trump campaign isn't pushing on that more, that he is the president for the Afghan peace process moving forward. And he's not upping the ante as far as the Israel-UAE deal goes, because that was, I think, pretty historic. But anyway, there's 2 weeks left. Let's see what messages each party pushes for. I think the Indian American community has made up his mind, so to speak, and hopefully it'll be more balanced this time around.
Who wants to make a point? Sir, come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that 22 million Americans, for the first time in American electoral history, have voted in what is called early voting, either in person or through postal ballot. That's quite a remarkable figure, about 15% of the electorate. We don't know which way it's gone. The polls can say anything they want. But it is interesting that Ms. Upala, I say this somewhat lightheartedly, referred to her state as a blue state, being Democratic. The Republicans are red. May I just say that it takes one red Donald Trump to clobber another red China. I think that is going to go down extremely well.
All right, on that blue note, we're going to dip into a short break. But nevertheless, thank you so much, Preity and Ambassador Vora, for joining us. And Professor Nalapa, thank you so much for being with us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.